Hello, my name is Shoshana Yehuda, and I am the Director of Emergency Preparedness for Touro College. This webinar is part one of a two-part series on business continuity planning for the Touro College and University system. As viewers in the audience, you represent senior staff from Touro College, Touro Law School, New York Medical College, and Touro Dental School. In this video, I will explain some of the basic concepts about business continuity and why it is important to keep our business, that of teaching students, ongoing during an emergency or disaster. In a follow-up video, I will explain how to use the software the institution has purchased that will enable us to identify our most critical areas, take the steps we need to move forward during a crisis until the situation has stabilized, and finally return to normal operations. For the sake of simplicity, throughout this video, I will reference all schools under the university system umbrella as either Touro or the institution. So the first step in business continuity is to understand why we need it. We want to make sure that our critical operations can still work no matter what adverse conditions we face. We may not be able to function at 100%, but we want the most important operations to continue. The goal of continuity planning is to minimize loss, continue serving our customers, our students, and keep some form of administrative operations. You cannot run a college without the help of your administrative staff. When disaster strikes, it will hit your administrative staff too. So we need to be sure we have at least a minimum of administration working to keep the critical functions going. By planning in advance of an emergency, we can mitigate some of its effects, thereby protecting our business. In the event of any disruption to a campus or the surrounding local community, Touro's administrative, academic, and research operations may have to be paused until the emergency situation has been addressed. The primary impact will be that student instruction will be impeded, and research initiatives may stall while order and safety is assured on the affected campus or campuses. The secondary impact is a subtler, long-term concern. We might experience student attrition and the loss of faculty to other institutions. If our customer base is reduced, we cannot make as much money as we need to stay in business. If our faculty leaves, we have no one to teach classes and again, could experience student attrition. Our response to and recovery from a disruptive event could also affect the institution's reputation and public image. Our public image will either be tarnished or enhanced based on our response. Therefore, an organized, efficient course of action to restore operations and minimize loss will be our first priority in continuity planning. In other words, first we need to ensure that critical operations, which for our college are teaching and research, are able to continue despite what is happening on a campus or the surrounding local community. One of the most difficult challenges in continuity planning is something that affects the borough, town, or city we live in. Not only is the college's business hampered, but students, faculty, and staff have to deal with their own personal issues surrounding the emergency. Business continuity planning has to factor in the issues faced by individual crises created by the emergency. Even if the college can perform its function of teaching students, it does not help if students are unable to attend classes. The institution has an obligation to protect and provide for students, faculty, and staff in the event of a major disruption of our operation. These obligations extend to each department being able to meet its individual obligations, to provide the services expected of them, and to carry out functions critical to our mission. These functions are categorized into business functions, critical support functions, and corporate level support functions. Business functions are those that provide services to our customers. As an educational institution, we provide teaching as a service to our students. If we lose a building during a natural disaster, do we have the ability to absorb classes into other locations? How much service can we provide at a minimum? How many of our faculty can teach online classes? How many of our programs have a full course load available for online learning? What would our losses be if we cannot provide learning services? These are some of the questions that must be asked in order for us to continue to provide our basic business function. Critical support functions are those without which the business cannot run. Financial processes are at the top of this list. Will our banking be hampered by the crisis? Do we know our bankers' contingencies for disasters as they relate to our financial functions? What processes are in place to secure our income from bursarial and financial aid sources? How long could we stay in business without paying employees, performing banking functions, or taking in income? These are some of the issues to be addressed when examining our critical support functions. Corporate level support functions are required for effective business operations. In addition to our teaching staff, we need administrative staff to help serve our students. How many critical staff do we have that may need to work from home? What equipment will they need to work from home? What type of access do they have to our systems? Do we need to make changes to our information security policies in order for employees to access our system remotely? Do we have human resource policies that explain how to work from home, the number of hours, the work that is expected, and the tracking of time? All of these questions require each department to be able to meet its individual obligations so that the college as a whole can continue in the business of teaching. Let's discuss the difference between emergency management planning and business continuity planning. Emergency management planning is focused on how a campus will respond to a crisis, not necessarily how the campus will continue to perform critical business functions. The institution's emergency operations plan addresses how we will react to a specific incident, focusing on life safety, minimizing injury and property damage, and reducing the severity of the incident. Normally, these activities take place during the first 48 hours and include activities such as warning students and employees, communicating with emergency responders, conducting evacuations, activating the Emergency Operations Center. Continuity planning is about ensuring our capability to carry on essential academic, research, and administrative operations for an event that lasts for an unacceptable period of time, not just 36 to 48 hours. Hurricane Sandy left the lower part of New York City without power for a week. A business can close for a week. However, what happens if the business has to stay closed for a month or more, as was the case after the attack on the Twin Towers? If you are only closing for a week, then you may not need a BCP. However, most businesses cannot survive being closed for a month or more without serious repercussions. This is where continuity planning comes in. It bridges the gap between emergency response and normal operations. A continuity plan helps us stabilize the business as we move from critical response to normalcy. Business continuity and disaster recovery may sound like interchangeable terms. However, they are very different concepts. Business continuity is proactive. The BCP provides us with the tools to avoid or mitigate the impact of a risk. Continuity implies a certain level of stability and durability. You can only have continuity if you have planned and made contingencies for the unexpected. This is a proactive approach, examining the what-ifs ahead of time and creating a plan to deal with the outcomes. Disaster recovery is a term that originates from the technology domain, but has been applied in recent years in a broader sense. Disaster recovery is reactive. There is an element of salvage and recouping of losses to restore organizational functions. If a business has not planned for the unexpected, some areas of the business may be so adversely affected that it cannot recoup its losses, or it could take longer to get the business back up and running. We are in the business of education. If we cannot conduct classes, we do not make money. If we do not make money, we will be out of business. So it is sound business sense to be proactive in our approach instead of reactive. An example of the difference between proactive and reactive response is the payroll processing that occurred after Hurricane Sandy in October 2012. At the time, payroll was processed at the main campus on 23rd Street in Manhattan. The building, along with a good portion of Lower Manhattan, had lost power, and the city shut down access to the area except for necessary personnel. There was no procedure already in place to process payroll when the main campus couldn't be accessed. Having a procedure already in place would have been a proactive measure and part of the BCP. Trying to process payroll after finding out we had no power, no access, and no contingency plan in place made us reactive in our response. We were in disaster recovery mode, which made processing payroll more difficult than it should have been. So instead of processing a regular payroll, we had to process it in parts from different locations based on the previous payroll, and adjustments had to be made to salaries when the next payroll was processed. Thanks to the dedication and hard work of the payroll and finance departments, we managed. But the idea of continuity is not just to manage. It is the ability to continue functioning smoothly. So what does an effective BCP look like? We start with department information. A BCP for your department will account for details related to basic department information, such as the number of people currently on staff, the locations they occupy, and their cost centers. The BCP then details your department's critical functions. Critical functions are processes that are vital to the institution. Without them, the institution will lose the ability to effectively achieve its critical objectives. Examples would be purchasing supplies, processing invoices, managing cash, interviewing prospective employees, conducting research, etc. Next, we would need to see what resource we have or will need in order to function smoothly. Resource inventory includes the personnel and equipment your department needs to conduct business. Your critical vendors must also be included in this group. You will need detailed information on the vendors who are essential to your department's continuity. A critical vendor for emergency preparedness is Rave Mobile Safety. I have information on how to reach them at any time, day or night, and how to reach them if I don't have access to a computer. Without that information, I cannot perform one of the critical functions of my department, that of emergency notification. You will need the same information for your department's critical vendors. Finally, data recovery information is crucial so that information technology can keep your department operational. Your departmental data recovery information is for applications that are unique to your department and are not part of the central applications provided by the institution for all departments. The IT Disaster Recovery Plan ensures that all central applications are functional. For example, my department uses the college's central applications, but relies upon an outside application to issue TC alerts. When I complete my departmental BCP, I would have to provide information regarding the Rave Mobile Safety System, which is used to issue TC alerts. You may not have applications specific to your department, in which case you have less information to complete. But if you do have these applications, they must be included in your departmental BCP. Business continuity planning is a campus-wide initiative and will engage all of Turo's administrative, academic, and research-oriented departments. This encompasses all programs, schools, and departments that conduct teaching, research, or public service. Any other units that provide essential support to these areas will be included in your continuity plan. The department head is the primary point of contact and the project manager for the plan. This video link was sent only to department heads, with the understanding that you may not be the person who will be trained in using the software and gathering the information needed. You may select a designee as the point of contact, provided the individual selected is detail-oriented, has the ability to interact with many people in the department, and has the ability to motivate others. In other words, you can delegate the job, but it has to be to someone who fits these qualifications. If your administrative assistant is not knowledgeable enough about the inner workings of your department or cannot rally the troops to cooperate in creating the plan, then you should not hand this responsibility over to him or her. This person will have to follow up on missing plan components and work closely with emergency preparedness to get answers about your department's needs. So it is very important that you choose the right person for the job. The role of support staff in continuity planning is critical. Very often, those who perform the daily tasks that keep a department running have the most knowledge about the department's inner workings. This information helps create a more robust plan. Therefore, all levels of the department should be involved in the planning process. The dialogue around business continuity should circulate among upper and middle managers, associate and assistant deans, key functional managers, building coordinators, and other support staff. Planning groups should be diverse in order to cover process dependencies. This makes for a more robust continuity plan. Although one person may be designated as the primary point of contact, this person should not complete the project by his or herself. The quality of the plan will rely upon the different perspectives from many people within the department. The point of contact should work as a project manager who seeks out and coordinates the help of others. Recognizing how difficult creating a BCP can be for an institution this size, I researched software solutions that will help us create our college-wide departmental BCPs. Kowali Foundation is a consortium of colleges and universities which recognize that higher education performs business continuity differently than private sector businesses. They created a software solution that specifically addresses the needs of colleges and universities. After pooling the financial resources of 6 colleges, they received a federal grant and created a business continuity software. We have branded this software as the TC Ready Business Continuity Tool. Since business continuity planning is really the discipline of operational level planning, this BCP tool is focused on departments, not just major divisions of the institution. The tool is a straightforward questionnaire with clear guidance and easy navigation. It stimulates conversation within departments about readiness and collects only the data essential to achieving a state of readiness. Additionally, the tool questionnaire asks questions specific to the administrative side of our business with a separate component included for the academic teaching side. All of you watching this video represent the administrative side of the business. We will address academic continuity once all of the administrative BCPs have been completed. Finally, the tool identifies action items to be completed by the department, as well as those action items that belong to higher levels of the institution. In other words, after your departmental BCP is completed, you will be able to identify areas under your control to strengthen your department readiness, those that require additional budgetary consideration, and those that can only be achieved by policy decisions at higher levels of the institution. You will be able to address your issues related strictly to your department's preparedness and keep separate the issues that can only be addressed after senior management or Board of Trustee decisions. In phase 2 of our continuity planning, I will review in detail how to complete the software questionnaire. For now, I will give a brief overview of some of the more crucial aspects of the software: critical functions, peak periods, dependencies, consequences, action items, and key resources. This will give you time to start thinking about some areas of business continuity planning before beginning training in how to use the software. Levels of criticality. As stated earlier, critical functions are processes that are vital to Turo. Without them, we will lose the ability to effectively achieve critical objectives. TC Ready allows us to assign a level of criticality in order to prioritize and set expectation about recovery times. Critical levels are numbered from 1 to 4. Critical 1 is a function that must be continued at normal or increased service load and cannot be paused under any circumstances. For example, higher education laws have made it absolutely necessary to continue emergency notifications. Critical 2 is a function that must be continued if at all possible, perhaps in reduced mode. Stopping completely will have grave consequences for the institution. A good example would be payroll and banking. Critical 3 is a function that can be paused if necessary, but must resume within 30 days or sooner. For example, classroom instruction, student advisement, or research. Critical 4 is a function that may be paused for as long as needed and can resume when conditions permit. For example, routine building maintenance or employee trainings. Peak periods represent the times when you would expect there to be especially high activity involved in accomplishing your critical functions. For example, the annual fiscal closing for accounting functions. This occurs every year, the same time of year, and would be considered a peak period for the finance division. In the section on peak periods, you will identify as many months of peak periods as your department has. For example, hurricane season on the East Coast is from June through November, but peak September through November. Since I send out emergency notifications related to weather and college closings, one of my peak periods for emergency notifications would be September through November. However, the summer brings its own unsettling conditions such as blackouts and heat waves. Therefore, I would have a second peak period for the months of June through August. Your department may have a similar situation wherein you have more than one peak period. The software will allow you to document all of your peak periods instead of selecting just one. Dependencies. We are not always aware of the level of dependence each department has upon another. TC Ready allows you to identify upstream and downstream dependencies. Upstream dependencies are departments whose reduced functioning would seriously impact your own department's ability to perform a critical function. For example, IT is an upstream dependent for all departments. Without IT, all functions at the institution would ground to a halt. Downstream dependencies are departments that would be seriously impacted if your department could not perform its critical functions. A simple way to view dependencies is to consider who produces what you need, which would be an upstream dependency, and who needs what you produce, which is a downstream dependency. Consequences. Knowing the consequences of slow recovery allows the institution to prioritize resources to achieve effective business continuity. In the TC Ready tool, you will be asked to identify which harmful consequences might occur from a drop-down list. These consequences include disruption to teaching or research, departure of faculty or staff, unmet payment deadlines, loss of revenue, etc. Action items answer the question, what can be done to prepare before a disaster strikes? Following up on action items lessen the impact of incidences on critical functions, making it easier for you to continue or restart the function. A typical action item begins with a verb and can be stated in one sentence. For example, store enough non-perishable food to feed all residential students for 3 days. Or develop a plan for secure storage of critical research materials. Or another example is cross-train departmental staff. Keep in mind that action items are ideas, not commitments. Think outside the box and don't feel constrained by resources. You may not have the money or resources now, but you can plan for them for the future. Some action items may be beyond the scope of your department to perform. That is perfectly okay. You can use them to start a conversation with your colleagues. Your department's key resources will encompass lots of areas. There are basic staff requirements, whether or not some staff can work from home, specific skills, stakeholders, equipment and supplies, special facilities or transportation. When planning for the staffing of your department during and after a crisis event, remember that there are many factors which influence a person's ability to come to work. Availability of childcare, schools, elder care, pet care, transportation, and many other factors when our lives are disrupted by disasters. So where do we go from here? The next step is for you to submit certain information to my office. You will receive a link in an email to a Qualtrics questionnaire in which you will identify specifics about your department and the person who will be responsible for your departmental BCP. There are only a few questions, and your responses will allow me to set up your department correctly in the TC Ready software. The email with the link will also give you a deadline for submission of the questionnaire. Please be sure to stick to the deadline so that we can continue with phase 2 this year. If at any time you have any questions or you would like to know more information about the software, please contact me at shoshana.yehuda@touro.edu. Thank you for your time and have a great day.